Hello my dear subscribers. Today, I will tell you about a wonderful film called The Call of the Wild. Just relax and enjoy. 1880s, USA. Large and playful family dog Buck, a Saint Bernard and Scottish Collie mix, lives happily in a home in Santa Clara, California. His master is the respected Judge Miller Bradley Whitford. The dog runs around the house at breakneck speed and steals food from the table. Nevertheless, the owner dotes on him, and therefore everything is forgiven to the dog. After another prank, the dog is escorted out of the house for the night. A trusting dog is kidnapped by thieves. On a large cargo ship he is taken to Alaska, where at this time, because of the gold rush, fortune seekers from all over the country flock. The tank was very far from home. The dog sees snow there for the first time. Arriving in the Yukon, Buck returns a fallen harmonica to a passing elderly prospector named John Thornton. The dog is sold to a postman named Perrault and his faithful assistant Francois. Buck meets other dogs. The leader of the pack was Spitz. Perrault explains their route to the dogs, and they travel on a dog sled, delivering letters to all settlements of the Yukon. It's winter, and it's very difficult for dogs. Buck sees snow for the first time in his life, but very quickly he gets used to his new role. The dog conquers all the dogs except the leader of the pack, a husky named Spitz. On the road, the once domestic dog begins to see the spiritual embodiment of his ancestors, a black wolf, symbolizing the dog's transition from life in the master's house to free will. In the morning they hit the road again to distribute mail. Buck helps the other dogs in the sled with food and water. During one of their trips they had to cross ice, but suddenly the ice cracked and Francois found herself underwater. Without thinking, Buck rushed towards her at full speed and saved her. Buck wins the love of not only the good-natured Perrault, but also the initially skeptical Francois. All the dogs want to follow him, which makes Spitz extremely angry. Perrault began to have a special attitude and trust in Buck. At night, Buck spots a white rabbit and begins chasing it through snowy hills and dense forests. Having caught up with the small animal, the dog lets it go, but Spitz kills the rabbit. The leader attacks the newcomer and wants to assert his dominance in the pack. But Buck defeats him. Ashamed and humiliated, the loser Spitz runs into the forest. The next morning, the big and kind dog becomes the leader. The other dogs accept him in his new capacity and recognize his outstanding abilities. Perrault, who is experiencing the loss of an experienced Spitz, agrees with the dogs and appoints Buck in charge. Never before had the team raced at such speed for the first time in his life. Perrault is not late for the post office, where a crowd of people is waiting for letters. There are no other means of communication in these parts yet. The dogs make a record run. Now he uses his wits to save Perrault and Francois from a dangerous avalanche. Perrault says that they do not bring mail, but hope. But the joy of the postman and the dogs does not last long. A black man receives a letter with an order to sell his dogs and leave the service. Prospector John Thornton sees Buck again, sees how he is sold to the unscrupulous adventurer Hal, who, in the company of Mercedes and Charles, goes in search of gold on a dog sled. He treats the dogs horribly and forces them to work until they are exhausted. Thornton thinks about the dog all the time and goes looking for it. Having met them, Thornton explains that it is already spring. The ice is about to break, and travelers should not go further. It is very dangerous, but they don't listen to him. Hal whips the dogs to make them walk. Only Buck doesn't move or makes any attempt to get up, which infuriates Hal. The guy takes up the club. John comes to Buck's defense. A fight breaks out between Thornton and Hal, and the guy retreats. Buck remains with his protector. Buck comes to his senses and sees that he is at Thornton's house. Buck goes outside to find out about his pack. Thornton explains that they have left. Thornton goes to a bar and gets drunk. Suddenly, Hal bursts into the room, declaring that because of Thornton, he lost everything and his dogs ran away. During a bar fight, Buck comes to Thornton's defense. Buck opposes Thornton's drinking and buries the bottle. Thornton tells Buck about his dead son, who always wanted adventure. As a result of this conversation, she and Buck decide to go canoeing together. While traveling down the river, their canoe accidentally falls into a waterfall and is broken, with no other choice. Thornton and Buck are forced to continue on foot. Along the way, they admire the beauty of Alaska. After some time, they find an abandoned house where they decide to stay. Wolves also lived in these spaces. In the morning, while Thornton was swimming in the river, he discovers gold. Buck helps him. Thornton allows Buck to take a walk, causing Buck to run into a bear. In addition, when he was in the forest, the dog notices a white wolf. At first, the wolf runs away from Buck for a long time until he realizes that the dog poses no threat to him. After this, they begin to sniff around in a friendly manner. The next day, when the wolves started hunting for a boar, the leader of the pack accidentally fell into the river, and Buck saved him. The wolves accept Buck into the pack as gratitude for his courage. Buck began to return to his owner till late. Thornton realizes that Buck has found his true tribe and his true home, and he decides to let Buck go so he can become the master of his own destiny. In the hut, under the cover of darkness, shots are suddenly heard. Thornton and Hell engage in a shootout that turns into a real massacre. Hell tries to find out the whereabouts of the gold. Buck suddenly appears, determined to protect his master. He forcefully pushes Hell into the burning hut, but during the shootout Thornton was wounded. Thornton is overjoyed when he sees Buck, but by this point, it is too late. Buck takes out a photo of his son and brings it to Thornton, but unfortunately, Thornton dies. A she-wolf approaches back and takes his word with her. Buck leaves with her. Time passes, and in these mountains, there is a place where a new breed of wolves prowls. They are more cunning than ordinary wolves, and all because the leader of this pack is a dog. They fear nothing and prosper. Some people think that this is a legend. But Buck is free and his own master because he heard the call of his ancestors. The film ends here.